Hi. So this morning, it's January 1st, 2025 at like 9:30, roughly 9:30 in the morning, in North Carolina. And so, this morning I want to talk for a little bit. I don't know how long this video will be. Hopefully it won't be very long, but I want to talk a little bit about, another problem. I say another problem because I've already, by the time this video is up, I will have posted at least one video, because I already have. I think I posted it about a month ago, something like that, about a negative kind of heart disconnected. I guess it's like a heart disconnected element of the spiritual community of spirituality. And even though I am technically a fairly spiritual person, technically, there are a lot of issues I have with spirituality right now. And I feel like it's very important to talk about those issues because you hear criticisms all the time of spirituality, not all the time, but frequently. You hear criticisms of spirituality from a religious standpoint, and I have a Christian background, so Christians criticize spirituality quite often. Not every Christian, but within Christian faith, you find a lot of folks who criticize, and I think rightfully so, honestly, criticize some elements of spirituality that are honestly quite dangerous. However, before I say however, I want to say I'm fairly spiritual, but I have some issues with spirituality, and I think there's some toxic stuff, some toxic kind of thoughts within the spiritual community right now that need to be addressed. And I'm not religious by any stretch. I wouldn't say I'm very religious or religious at all. Personally, I don't think I'm religious at all, but I do have a Christian background. And there are a lot of elements of Christianity I agree with, but I wouldn't consider myself Christian. However, I agree with many elements of Christianity, and I believe in God, and I believe in operating from a place of love and operating from a place of God's love. And that includes really operating from the heart. And I think the spiritual community is abusing the heart right now. Big time, like ginormously abusing the heart. And that's something that I want to talk about. And I've heard some people speaking out against this in the spiritual community, and thank God for that, because I think people need to speak out more and more against the suppression of emotion and the suppression of the heart within the spiritual community. But I feel like I've got a lot of thoughts on this, so I think it's I think it's the responsible thing for me to do, to talk about it. So I'm going to talk in this video when I get to it, because I have to say a little something first, because I go off on tangents. I apologize, but it's what I do. My plan in this video is to talk about one of the emotions that's vilified within the spiritual community quite a bit. And I think all emotions are felt within the heart. And so I think vilifying emotions is very much throwing the baby out with the bathwater. And I think that's what a lot of spiritual people are doing right now, is throwing the baby out with the bathwater. And the baby is the heart, y'all. And it's the most loving part of your soul is the heart. And you are throwing it out with the bathwater. And that's pretty scary. So the emotion that I want to talk about today, I'm pretty sure is going to be fear, and the vilification of fear within the spiritual community. And I know a lot of spiritual people would I believe a lot of spiritual people would disagree with this, but I believe fear is an emotion, and it's an emotion that needs to be honored. And I'm going to get to that. Not that we want fear, not that we want to live in a world of fear, but I believe fear is a natural byproduct of a world of suffering. And so to vilify fear is to really silence the heart. And that's very dangerous, which is what I want to get to. But before I go into a little bit of detail, I want to kind of side note for a couple minutes or whatever it's going to be. So I am I'm pretty much over a cold, but I got sick about a week and a half ago. And so if you hear me sniffle or my throat sounds weird, that's why. But also, I didn't get a lot of sleep last night. It's New Year's Day, and it's like 9:40 in the morning right now, Eastern time, because I'm in North Carolina. So it's 9:40 in the morning on January 1st, 2025, New Year's Day. And I only slept like 5.5 hours last night, and I intended to sleep longer, but I just had all this energy. And I oftentimes get a lot of energy when I've got something I need to create. And I think it was this I needed to talk about. So I had a lot of energy this morning, so I'm kind of using it, but I'm starting to get to that point where I want to take a nap, and it's not even 10 in the morning yet. So, but anyway, so if I lose my train of thought, that's part of the reason. It's because I'm tired. And the other part is because I have a lot of issues with brain fog, which I'm trying to work on. But that takes time. But yeah, I do get brain fog. So that's probably going to be another reason that I might kind of get a little confused during this conversation, and I might kind of space out for a moment or whatever. But okay, so yeah, so I'm just going to talk a little bit more about the vilification of fear within the spiritual community. But before I do that, I want to say something that I might have said in potentially in a video that I think I already said this in one of my videos, so never mind. I think I mentioned that the heart in the physical sense pumps blood, but the heart pumps love in the spiritual sense. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about that and in the way it relates to emotion, because it's very important to the topic of fear. So the heart space, in the physical sense, we all know pumps blood throughout the body. But in the spiritual sense, I think it pumps love. And so what that means is, because we all, I think, are embodied with God's love through the creation of our soul, God's creation of us. And our sole purpose within our soul is to embody love and to get back to God's love, ultimately. Whether you believe in God or not, you could, in theory, get back to God's love as an atheist, I think. Now, I don't think it's good to be atheist. I don't think it's ideal to be atheist. I think you're going to be a happier and healthier soul if you're not atheist. However, I think it's even possible, I know a lot of people would disagree with this, but I think it's even possible to get back to God's love as an atheist. Now, I don't agree with atheism. I'm not an atheist, but I don't want to exclude atheists in this. I think ultimately you want to get back to a place of love, and I believe that's God's love. But the point is to be a loving soul and to operate from a place of love and a place of kindness. Now, love can be fierce, though. I don't want to act like love is not, doesn't have power or strength to it. Love is very transmutational, and it brings things back into balance. And so that sometimes requires like some fierceness and some boldness. So anyway, but you want to operate from a place of love and a place of kindness. So what this means when it comes to the heart is, I think that, just like the heart pumps blood through the human body, or the body in general, the heart in the spiritual or the etheric sense pumps love throughout the soul. And your goal in life is to operate as much as possible from a place of love and to grow in love. And as the vessel that pumps love throughout the body, which is what the heart does, it pumps love throughout the body, through the soul, in my opinion, it really grows to understand love more than probably any other element of the soul, any other element of the chakra system. If you believe in chakras, I believe in chakras, but I don't pay a ton of attention to chakras, but I do believe in them. And it's the middle of the 7 main chakras. The heart is the middle of the 4th of the 7 main chakras. So anyway, so it pumps love throughout the soul. And I'm starting to lose my train of thought, so please bear with me. So I was saying there that I was losing my train of thought, and then right when I said I was losing my train of thought, I realized I actually needed to pause the video because I couldn't even remember what I was trying to say. So I just ended up pausing the recording, and now I'm back to it. And now that I'm back to it, it started getting kind of windy, and it was windy about 5 minutes ago. So I don't know if it's going to get windy again. I'm outside because it's nice to record outside, and it helps me be a little more focused, just because I think it's easier for me to think when I'm outside. So, and I like to ground also. I think it helps me think, and so I like to ground outside when I'm recording these, which is why I'm outside a lot of the time when I record. But anyway, so I was saying that the heart is what really facilitates the flow of blood throughout the body. And in the etheric or the spiritual sense, it facilitates the flow of love, the flow of, I think, God's love through us, because we're created, in my opinion, we're created from God. We're all fractals, from my understanding. We're all what I've heard others in the spiritual community say. And again, I'm fairly spiritual, but there are elements of spirituality I disagree with, which is what I'm going to talk about. But one of the elements of spirituality I do agree with is the idea that we're all created from God. We're all fractals of God, from my understanding. And so anyway, as fractals of God, we're all built from the love of God. And so we've got that love flowing through us, through our soul. And the heart chakra, the spiritual or etheric heart within us, is pumping that love. And because it's pumping that love, it really grows to understand love more than I think any, or it grows to empathize with, sympathize with, and value love, and really embody love more than any other part of our soul. And that's because I think, from my understanding, its main purpose, the heart's main purpose, is to nurture and make way for love in the soul. And so it really does come to embody love. And so I think next I need to talk about emotion in that, because that's really the main point of this discussion, is the vilification of emotion. And I'm going to get into the vilification of fear. So emotion in a world such as this, a world with suffering, you have famine, you have illness, you have death, you have poverty, you have war, you have violence, you have all these awful things. In a world of suffering, of course we're going to have pain. Of course we're going to feel pain. Of course we're going to feel sadness. Of course we're going to feel grief. Of course we're going to feel anger. Of course we're going to feel doubt. Of course we're going to feel damned lack of abundance. I think one of the worst elements of spirituality is the vilification of the sense of lack. I'm so damned sick. Sorry, I'm getting kind of mad because I didn't think I was going to do this. I get mad sometimes because the spiritual community is really cruel to the heart, and I think it needs to be understood. I think the spiritual community needs to know what they're doing to the heart space, and they're destroying the heart space right now. Not all spiritual people, but I think a lot of them. And so, of course, we're going to have a state or a sense of lack in a world where there's suffering. Would you put a child, and I think we need to think of ourselves more as children. We don't, at all, which I think is one of the most awful elements of our society, is we don't think of ourselves as children. And we need to think of ourselves as children more. I mean, we're children of God, y'all. We're children of God. So think of ourselves more as children. But as adults, we have a responsibility to cater to and nurture the child within us. So we're both the child and the parent in one. We're the child of God, but we're also responsible to honor the heart space, which is the nurturer of love, which is that inner child. I think the inner child really, in a lot of ways, is love. And it is our role in life. It is our God-given, God-expected responsibility to nurture love. And what's happening is I think the spiritual community is not, it doesn't understand, ironically, because the spiritual community, people in the spiritual community talk all the time about inner child, and I'm like, you're beating up the inner child within yourself, honey. That's what you're doing. You're silencing the heart. You're vilifying these air quotes negative emotions, which are really just wounded love. I mean, negative emotions are wounded love. I think we need to think of it more like that. We don't, but I think we should. We need to remember, in my opinion, that negative emotions are wounded love. And positive emotions like joy and faith and sense of abundance and I'm kind of blanking now. But anyway, positive emotions are basically nurtured or healed love. And negative emotions like sadness and even fear. I think fear is a negative emotion. I think it is an emotion. Again, a lot of spiritual people don't think it's an emotion. I think it's an emotion. Fear, doubt, sense of lack, confusion, sadness, anger. All those things are, those air quotes, negative emotions are really just wounded love, in my opinion. And so wounded love needs to be healed. And to heal it is to nurture it. And part of healing it is to understand it and sympathize with it and try to see what it's telling you. And so the inner child of love, and now I'm starting to lose my train of thought. Okay, so I had to pause the video again because, like I said, I lost my train of thought. And so whenever I lose my train of thought, I have to go back in and, listen to what I said because I can't even remember, half of what I said. When I record these videos, it's I don't know. I kind of remember it, but there's just, I think, because I have a lot of thoughts around certain topics, specifically this one. And so I have all these thoughts kind of swimming around in my head. And when I'm recording these videos, I don't even really know what thought's going to come out. And I have an idea, but I don't really know. And so anyway, I get a little confused. And so then I have to go back and listen every 5 to 10 minutes of recording and then go back. And that seems to be what's happening this time. And it's happened to me before when recording. So anyway, so so I think the spiritual community, what it is with the heart, because I'm trying to address the spiritual community. I mean, anybody can listen to this, but this is more me addressing issues within the spiritual community. The heart really is there to nurture love. And in a world of pain and suffering, of course, you're going to have negative emotions. I mean, like I was saying, with suffering and everything and violence and all, illness and all this stuff, of course, you're going to have some pain in that. You're going to feel that. Well, again, going back to the inner child, if you were if you are a parent, think of your child. And if you're not one, imagine having a child. Would you go and put your child, and I think a lot of spiritual people do this, and it's really creepy because it's so messed up. It's so let them eat cake, and it really pisses me off because the spiritual community can be very let them eat cake a lot when it comes to emotions. And it kind of low-key or not so low-key enrages me. So basically, think of a child. Imagine if you don't have a child, imagine that you have a child. Imagine putting your child in a world with famine, war, not just a world, in an area rattled with famine, war, disease, violence, death, all these awful things. And then go to that child and say, honey, sorry, I know, because a lot of spiritual people think that you have to be in this high vibe state. They believe that to manifest, and manifesting has so many issues with it. I mean, manifesting is a whole can of worms, and I have opinions on manifesting, but that's not the point of this video. But yeah, manifesting's got some problems too. Big problems, but that's not the point of this video. It's got huge problems. Sorry. I want to emphasize there's some pretty big problems with with manifesting. Not necessarily all manifesting, but a lot of manifesting. So anyway, a lot of people think that to like get what they want in life, they have to be high vibe. You've got to be so high vibe. And it's like, I have to be in a state of abundance instead of a state of lack, or I have to be in a state of joy instead of a state of sadness, or else I'm going to attract sadness back into my life, and all this, BS that you hear spiritual people say a lot of the time. Well, imagine going to your child and saying, sorry, honey, I know that there's like, death and violence and war and famine and all this stuff going on, and it's very likely that you might, fall into many of those kind of holes, all those, many of those issues within our society might befall you. But you know what? You're not going to get out of it. You're not going to get out of this war-torn area. You're not going to get your health back. You've got this terminal illness. You're not going to get your health back. You're not going to get out of homelessness. You're not going to get out of this place of violence until you embody abundance, and you believe so strongly that you're going to get out of it. You're going to get out of it. You're going to persevere. You're going to be the state of abundance. You're going to, but if, no, you cannot pay attention to, and you cannot listen to that sadness. You've got a little bit of fear. No, you've got to shut up. You can't listen to it. No. It's going to derail you, and you're not going to be able to get out of your situation. Well, hopefully you wouldn't be that sorry POS who says something like that to this poor child. Hopefully you'd be the decent soul to recognize, and I'm sorry, I'm getting really angry, but I feel like this has to be pointed out because it's horrible what the spiritual community is doing right now to the heart. And I really need to emphasize that. I feel like I need to emphasize that. Hopefully I'm not being like overly self-important or whatever, but, hopefully a decent soul would go and say, you know what? Actually, maybe your heart should feel a pretty heavy amount of sadness in a place and an environment full of sadness. Now, does that mean you need to wallow in the state of victimhood? No, but you should still allow yourself to feel sadness and feel fear and feel all these things and honor what those emotions are telling you. It's kind of like going and, you get a wound to your arm. Let's say like you get a pretty gnarly wound to your arm. You don't want to just like, and it's near an artery. You don't want to just be like, oh, let me just ignore this. No, it's telling you something's wrong and you probably need to go to the ER. Okay? Your negative emotions are telling you something. They're telling you about your world. And you need to sympathize with those emotions and understand what they're telling you. And that includes feeling and recognizing and honoring those negative emotions. And maybe even in a world of pain and suffering, depending on your situation, you might need to actually genuinely feel more of a sense of lack than abundance. Dare I damned say it. You might need to feel more of a sense of lack than abundance. You might need to feel more of a sense of sadness than joy. And through feeling it, you're allowing your heart to talk to you. You're listening to your heart, which empathizes with love more than I think any other part of your soul. So you're really learning from love and embodying that love through loving your own heart, which is going to teach you to love the hearts of others, which is going to teach you to be that love in the world that's going to bring about change. You don't bring about more love in the world by silencing love. You don't bring about more love in the world by silencing the heart, but I think a lot of spiritual people are silencing their heart right now. And so as another analogy, and I'm sorry, I'm getting really heated, but I don't know. I've had these thoughts for a while and I've been thinking about talking about this, and I kind of wanted to do it in a more well-mannered way, but it just didn't happen. So I'm sorry that I'm yelling, but I mean, I don't know what else to do. So anyway, okay, so the last little bit of what I want to talk about here is going back to the inner child. So kind of think of like, you've got a child. Imagine this child in having nightmares. So I'm going to talk about fear. That's what I was supposed to talk about, and I kind of got, I thought I was mostly going to talk about fear, and then I just kind of went to this place of the air quotes negative emotions in general. So now I'm going to talk about fear a little bit. So imagine your child has nightmares. Nightmares could be like fear, right? Nightmares are oftentimes very fear-based. So, and before I talk about this, I need to say something about the spiritual belief when it comes to fear. So, spiritual people tend to think fear is not real. And to be fair to spiritual people, and again, I'm fairly spiritual, but there's this element of spirituality kind of enrages me because I think it's destroying the heart space, which is really working against love. To destroy the heart is to lessen your capacity for love, and you're not going to I don't think you're going to become a nice person at all if you lessen your capacity for love. And I think a lot of spiritual people are lessening their capacity for love right now. But anyway, through silencing the heart. Now, so spiritual people talk about how fear is oftentimes, not every spiritual person, but a lot of spiritual people, a lot of the school of thought within spirituality is that they believe that that fear is not real. And to be fair to them, there's an element of truth to what they're saying, I think, in the sense that the thing you fear has not yet happened. There can be an element of truth to that, or even if it's something that you've been told will happen, maybe you have more faith in God or faith in the divine, and that helps you cope with what's happening. But even then, imagine you're on, let's say this was hundreds of years ago, and you were wrongly accused of something that you didn't do, or something, you didn't deserve, and you're sentenced to death. Well, of course you're going to have fear of that death and sadness around death. Now, you might have more faith in God, and then that'll help sustain you, but of course you're still going to have some fear. Of course you're going to have fear of the pain you'll feel, and you'll have sadness over the fact that you might not see your husband or your wife again, or your children again, or your family, or, that your life is cut short. That's sad. And we need to recognize that. So fear is not necessarily real in the sense that it hasn't necessarily, whatever you're scared of hasn't happened yet. But of course, fear is real to you in that moment because you are scared, and you honestly probably should be scared. Just like you should feel sad in a world where there's suffering like this, you should feel fear in the sense that, fear is very much like this mixed bag of all these different negative emotions, including sadness. And we resonate with fear in that way. So we need to feel it just the same as we feel sadness. And I think, like I said, one of the biggest lies within spirituality is the idea that fear is not real. So even though there's an element of truth to it in the sense that it hasn't happened, I think it's getting taken out of context big time. And I think the spiritual community, a lot of people in the spiritual community are taking this out of context, saying, well, it hasn't happened yet. And so then they're thinking they shouldn't experience it and shouldn't honor that emotion of fear. So, now I want to get to an analogy, which is, again, of the child, another analogy of the child. And so imagine you're a parent, your mom, your dad, and your child has nightmares. And those nightmares are very much like fear. So your child's, let's say you have a daughter, she's in her bedroom. And she says, Mommy, I'm really scared. I think there's a monster under the bed. Now, you don't believe there's a monster under the bed. I'm going to give two examples. So example number one is the wrong thing to do. And I think it's what a lot of spiritual people are actually doing. So the wrong thing to do is go to your child and say, well, that's ridiculous. There's no such thing. Stop talking about it. Shut up. Don't say anything else about it. And then, imagine, so that parent who thinks, okay, this is ridiculous, shut up, which is horrible. Don't tell your child to shut up, but it's, it's that idea. And I think a lot of spiritual people are trying to shut up their heart, and that's awful. I really think they are shutting up their heart through silencing their emotions. And it is so awful to me. It's so disturbing that a lot of spiritual people are doing this right now. So, imagine this child, saying, Mommy, I'm scared. There's a monster under my bed. I think there's a monster under my bed. And so instead of listening to your child, trying to soothe your child, trying to say, hey, I understand where you're coming from. I know there was a scary movie on and you saw your sister watching a scary movie, but it's okay. It's not real, or, whatever it is. Instead of soothing and nurturing the child, which is really what as a parent you should do, and then try to, soothe them and say, hey, I really don't think that's going to happen. Here's another viewpoint, but I will listen to you. Let me turn the light on. Let me turn the lamp on, the night light on. If you want, I can fall to sleep with you. And then, and then you walk away and you get in bed like an hour later or whatever when your daughter's fallen asleep. And that's the right way to handle it, in my opinion. Well, the way the spiritual person, a lot of spiritual people treat the heart, to my mind, is kind of like the parent that says, well, that's ridiculous, shut up. Stop talking to me. This is silly. You're just a scaredy cat. Just go to bed. And not only are they saying just go to bed, they're doing something even worse, because they're really silencing it. They're forcing silence upon the heart. They're forcing silence upon that child, that inner child. And so they go, in this analogy, it's like the spiritual person is going and shutting the door, locking the door from the outside, blaring music to not listen to the child screaming. The child is scared out of her wits in this analogy. And it's made that much worse because the child's not being nurtured. But part of nurturing is trying to supply reason, trying to talk to the child and say, okay, I know you're scared of that, but that's a movie that you saw. It's okay. It's not going to happen to you. But to the child's mind, it's real. So anyway, I think a lot of spiritual people are really being that aggressor to the heart space, to the inner child, to the embodiment of love. And I think a lot of spiritual people are turning off their ability to love right now. And yes, you see it outside of the spiritual community, but I think you see it very heavily within the spiritual community. And that is alarming to me. So again, I'm so sorry that I had to yell a little bit and I got heated, but I don't know, I don't know. I feel like it was necessary. So I do apologize if it wasn't necessary, but I feel like it was necessary. So thank you for listening, and Happy New Year.